It is time for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. As always, I'm joined by the fighter Pete Rogers Jr. is here to break down UFC 299. Goes down tomorrow night down here in my home state of Florida, down in South Florida, about 4-hour drive from me. Of course, we have got the bantamweight title fight rematch between Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera. Also, our co-main event is also a 5-round matchup. That is going to be Dustin Poirier taking on Benoit Saint Denis, which I just call classic. Old school UFC matchmaking, the up-and-coming rising prospect taking on the veteran that's been around for a long time. Also, we've got the UFC debut of Michael Page taking on Kevin Holland, Gilbert versus Della, Maddalena, and of course, the pay-per-view is going to kick off with Jan and Song Yadong, and of course, a very notable heavyweight matchup as he featured prelim, Curtis Blades taking on Jailton Almeida. Of course, that was a matchup that was supposed to take place back in November of last year. Did not happen due to an injury. Pete, happy Friday, man. How's it going, man?
Oh, what's going on, man? It's been a hell of a week. The whole family's been sick. I was sick as a dog. Wasn't able to really talk much, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to break down the card with you. It's an excellent card. And yeah, I can't wait to see where your head's on some of these matchups. I feel like it's going to be an interesting show because pre-show, Jason and I are kind of on opposite sides on a lot of these fights. So I can't wait to hear. But also it's going to give you guys a great guide for like game theory and how you should be splitting your exposure and how you should be attacking this slate. So let's get right into it.
Appreciate everyone. Sorry, hitting that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. That's a great way to show your support for the channel. Of course, we got our Discord channel, which is totally free. Great conversations going on in there. We got our DraftKings contest that's already up. Get into that contest for tomorrow night. And of course, congratulations to Leon76 taking down last week's contest, scoring 567 points. Detzell coming in second, and Gene Holloway 30 coming in third. And the winning lineup was Jairzinho Rozenstruik, Muhammad Kayev, Zahabi, which did not see that one coming. And then, of course, Duncan, Klein, and Rozabov going out there. That was the ultimate line out there in the Fight HQ contest. Of course, our season-long standing, that's in Discord as well. Also, there are some affiliate links down below if you want to take advantage of those. That's a great way to show your support here for Fight HQ. But, you know, getting into game theory and talking about game theory, and I don't know when you first started looking at salaries. It was a couple days ago. It was probably maybe on Tuesday. I looked at salaries. I want to say they came out Monday night. And my the very first thought was like these under 8,000 options, especially main event, co-main event, you know, looking at someone like a Michael Page, a Gilbert Burns, you know, some other ones throughout this fight card that you looked at. But I know pre-show, the one fight that, you know, you're not going to feel great about, but is probably going to be key to potentially being optimal. And that's that Ian Cutelaba and Philippe Leans fight.
Yeah, I mean, last week was a disaster for me. I mean, I was throwing up. I missed the whole entire fight card. I didn't even enter our own contest. So like now I'm going to be down on the leaderboards. I think I've dropped to the middle of the pack. So I got to do some catching up. So now I'm going to have one contest. It was just a complete blur last week. But this week when I saw the salaries, completely different than last week. Last week we had a ton of massive favorites, zero mid-range. This week, I am all in love with the mid-range. I think that's how you're going to separate yourself from everybody. And I actually think that's how a lot of my lineups are going to be created, right? Like you can get to some of the fighters at the top end, but like some of these pivotal matchups are within the 8K range. And that's what I want. That's what I want to target. These fights that could end inside the distance. These fighters that have good historical paths to DFS success. You know, you have some fighters that haven't been tested 15 minutes or 25 minutes, but you know, if you go and you look at their box scores, or if you look at what their previous performances have been like, they're like DFS wonders. So I'm interested to see how some of these fights go. And obviously you're going to have some split exposure because on UFC 299, you know, you're in front of a big crowd. You got nerves a part of everything. It's not just the apex anymore. There are going to be upsets. It's just a matter of targeting the correct ones.
Yeah, it's like when I saw Benoit Cop and Matthias Nicolau was announced as a main event, I go, oh, that's an Apex card.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't even have to know what card it was. Like, yep, that's Apex. If that's the main event, oh, that's an Apex card. Yeah, when I was doing my podcast yesterday, Daniel, I thought he laid it out perfectly. Apex card, UFC, like AAA. It's the developmental league of the UFC, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically what the Contender Series was. We got some Contender Series cards that are better than Apex cards. Granted, there's only 5 fights to work with, but still, strength of schedule is not a priority when you just need to put on X amount of fights per year. But here we are. We're actually getting treated to one of the best cards of all time, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this card, UFC 300. I think 300 is a deeper card, but I think a lot of people would probably say the UFC 299 main card is probably more of a main card. They're more interested in the UFC 300 card. But also my thought about game theory here is looking at who are our fighters that we have to target for Takedown City. And there are two names that really stick out to me. They're both on the prelims. One being Michel Pereira taking on Michal Olszewczuk, and then the other one being Matthias Gamrot taking on Rafael dos Anjos. We saw what Vicente Luque was able to do against RDA. Now, obviously, RDA was probably not thinking that all of a sudden Vicente Luque is going to become a takedown artist in that matchup. But to me, those are two guys that I'm really looking at. The Blades Almeida fight's kind of interesting because, obviously Curtis Blades, when he goes in there, for the most part, no one's trying to take him down, but Jailton Almeida, we know that's what he wants to do. I think that's kind of a sneaky matchup in terms of takedown options. And then on the main card, there's two I really look at, and that is Gilbert Burns and Kevin Holland, because that to me is their clear path to victory in both their matchups.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand what you're saying with Gilbert Burns. And he will lace up those wrestling shoes from time to time. And he has some of the best jiu-jitsu in the division. It's just he's also in love with his hands, and he's a grappler that is really fallen in love with his striking and has good striking. It's been some time since we've seen that chin get tested. So I'm not going to include him in the takedown group as far as guys that are absolutely going to grapple. If I had to, I kind of have 6 of them, which is a lot, but we have a lot of fights on this card. I'd probably say Gamrot, Benoit St. Denis, Curtis Blades / Jailton Almeida, Asu Almabayev, and Cutelaba. I think all of those fighters have great takedown potential. It's just a matter of, deciding whether they want to wrestle or not.
And, of course, if you got any questions there on the fights, already seeing the questions for the main event. We're about to get into the main event. Leave those in the chat. We'll get to those throughout the show. If you want to leave a super chat, that'd be very much appreciated. So let's get right into the main event. Of course, it is a rematch with the first time Chito Vera getting the victory. And, of course, now Sean O'Malley is a much different fighter now than he was back then. This is his first title defense since claiming that title against Aljamain Sterling. He is a minus 265 betting favorite, plus 215 for Marlon Vera. On DraftKings, Sean O'Malley, 9,200. On FanDuel, he's $23 for Chito Vera. He is $7,000, and on FanDuel for Chito Vera, he is $14. Pete, let's hear your breakdown.
Yeah, I think in the first encounter we saw that O'Malley was getting out to a hot start. Picking Marlon Vera apart from range. Marlon Vera kind of falling victim to what he always does, is absorbing damage and waiting for the perfect moment, and then kind of, it wasn't long, but he lets his opponents kind of get into the fight a little too much for my liking, if I'm being honest. And then he made some adjustments, and then he landed a beautiful low kick on Sean O'Malley, which basically gave him drop foot and was very, very effective and led to the ultimate TKO win over Sean O'Malley. Now, because Sean O'Malley's mobility was completely hindered from that low kick, and he's a guy who has suffered lower body injuries in the past, like the Andre Sukumtop fight, I do think that O'Malley's not the most durable fighter at all. I don't think that he is durable as from his own body holding up in an MMA bout. I think his chin is fine. I just feel like, he's a string bean for this weight class, but it's also what gives him his best advantages, and that's his length, his reach, and his timing. His footwork is great. He cannot allow for another miracle kick to happen here against Marlon Vera, because he needs to be on his bicycle. And what I mean by that is he needs to be dancing on the outside, pop-shotting, and moving. Kind of similar to what Corey Sandhagen has done within the division and what Corey Sandhagen did to Marlon Vera. And it's a perfect game plan. Obviously, Sandhagen has some takedown potential that he can mix in to kind of keep his opponents at bay. But I do think that the volume, the speed, the quickness, and the timing of Sean O'Malley will give Marlon Vera some fits. And historically, Marlon Vera has been a very, very slow starter. Such a slow starter that he has to kind of, come back in a lot of these fights. And sometimes it's like his corner, Jason Perillo, they have to wake Marlon Vera up. I don't know if it's being gun shy because he's afraid of getting hurt, or if it's, not wanting to gas himself out and kind of pacing at a wrong rate. with all that being said, Marlon Vera is an excellent play because he's at 7,000. He is totally live to win this fight. He has the confidence of winning the previous fight, despite O'Malley kind of like illegitimizing, what actually happened in there. I mean, it was an effective low kick. You can't really fault anything from that. And the follow up ground and pound was very, very, very brutal. 7,000 price tag on Marlon Vera, 5 rounds, can totally win a decision, can totally knock out Sean O'Malley. The way I'm predicting the fight to go is O'Malley's going to be there to land his strikes and not there when Marlon Vera looks to answer. And we're going to see Sean O'Malley win a unanimous decision. But, at 9,200, I would love to see O'Malley somewhat break the slate by landing tons of volume. We've seen Vera get, hit and lit up like a Christmas tree time and time again. But I do think that O'Malley's going to be very wise. And with it being 5 rounds, I think he's going to be very careful to not gas himself out. So I'm going to see Sean O'Malley winning a lackluster DFS score, but doing enough to win a decision at 9,200.
I'm with you exactly. The way I see this fight going is I think it's going to go 25 minutes, and I kind of see Sean O'Malley getting up 3 rounds to nothing. Marlon Vera comes back in the 4th and 5th, and we're going to see O'Malley win via decision, which, by the way, that prop bet out there is plus 100, so I think it kind of tells you the way the betting public is seeing this one happen. And I was watching a clip of an interview that Sean gave this week where he basically noted that he's like, hey, you know what? I know I'm going up against a durable guy. This guy doesn't get dropped. I think we're going to see a lot of volume. And one of the more interesting clips I saw over the past, I would say, 40 hours was Tim Welch, where he was talking about the Aljo fight. And he said, he goes, we had literally practiced that sequence throughout the entire camp because we saw this trend on film with Aljamain Sterling, and we just knew it fit Sean's style with being able to throw punches off his back foot. I think this thing goes 25 minutes. I know there was a question in Discord already about best cash punt play. I think Marlon Vera may be one of the more safer cash punt plays if you want to go there. If you want to kind of use the Pete thought process of finding someone who's a low end that maybe can get you, even in a loss, get you 40, 45 points. I think Marlon Vera is kind of that more of a safer play this week. And you look at the prop bets here, TKO KO for Sean O'Malley plus 240, plus 500 for Marlon Vera. I would say this, I don't know if I wouldn't mind a sprinkle with that plus 500 on Marlon Vera.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it either, to be honest. I mean, it's totally possible. We haven't really seen the chin of Sean O'Malley get all that tested because he's so damn flawless out there. I mean, the most we've seen Sean O'Malley have to deal with adversities within that Petr Yan fight. And, in the Petr Yan fight, he dug deep and arguably lost that fight, was taken down numerous times, was in a war, split Petr Yan open. But like Marlon Vera hits really hard and can totally shut off O'Malley's lights on an exit or something like that. So I don't hate the Marlon Vera 7,000 call. If you guys want to get behind it, I will for some of my lineups. I will account for it. Perhaps a stack is like a unique build, just because it is a bantamweight bout and there is a lot on the line. There is a history, so there is some familiarity between these two, and maybe they go out there and just put on a volume type of fight. Could happen. Vera's volume is much better of late. The Pedro Munhoz bout showed that Vera can actually throw volume for 3 rounds. He threw 251 significant strikes, landed 141. So that's 86.4 in the decision win. The issue there is that just like Munhoz is a plotting fighter. He's not a rangy guy like O'Malley who uses footwork. So I don't think that there will be a crazy amount of volume. I'm not going to stack in many fights. In many of my lineups, but I think that O'Malley rolls with a decision.
Just because of the amount of fights on this fight card, it would not be a stackable fight, but I could see if you're looking to get a little bit different, it'd be a great way to get different. If you're in a state that has Prize Picks, because, well, I'm now in a state that Prize Picks is no longer in, there are 2 props out there for Sean O'Malley, significant strikes, 112.5, fantasy score, 110.5. If I was going to attack either one of those, Pete, I think I would attack that significant strike prop of 112.5. This thing goes 25 minutes. I would imagine he's going to clear that number pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, it also could be a stinker of a fight, right? Like it really could be a stinker of a fight where they're kind of just like feinting and faking and just trying to draw each other out. And then if feints and fakes were a part of their game plan leading up to the fight, you could see them both feinting and faking and nobody reacting. And that's kind of like where it's like just edging each other out on the scorecards or per round with volume. And I would think that he would hit that and eclipse that number on a 5-round bout, but stranger things have happened. And this could be this. I think O'Malley really just cares about getting the victory. I don't necessarily think he cares about getting a highlight, as what many people believe.
And one thing I will mention is that we are now the previous 4 UFC events. I don't know if, Pete, you're aware of this. The underdog in the main event has won the last 4 UFC fight cards.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's been a hell of a year. And so I say prioritize main event and co-main event underdogs. I've been saying it for years. And these guys are hungry. These guys are trying to come in there and change their lives. And all you need is just the right recipe on the right night. And it happens so much in this sport, and it's so difficult to be perfect. So when you see people in there dominating, it's admirable.
Cheeto did need the curtain up to make weight. He looked relieved when he made weight. Like it almost seemed like they were not quite sure if they were going to be on championship weight or not. By the way, Merab Dvalishvili is the backup fighter. He did make weight. I'll say this. We don't want to see anything happen to Cheeto Vera. Not make it tomorrow night.
I was thinking that too.
If Sean O'Malley accepts Merab on less than 24 hours notice, mad respect to Sean O'Malley, because he shouldn't take that fight on 24 hours notice.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough to come in there on such short notice for both guys, but definitely more for the champion to kind of adjust when it's completely different stylistic matchups. But yeah, I mean, we got a lot of people in here right now checking us out. Thank you guys so much. UFC 299 is going to be awesome. If you can hit that like button, try to get us over 100 likes, that'd be really appreciated.
Of course, our co-main event is also a 5-round matchup. It is in the lightweight division. Benoit Saint Denis taking on Dustin Poirier. Benoit Saint Denis is a minus 225 betting favorite, plus 185 for Dustin Poirier. Poirier is $7,300 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Saint Denis, $8,900 on DK, and $19 on FanDuel. And Benoit Saint Denis looking to do something that no other UFC fighter has been able to do, and that's hand Dustin Poirier back-to-back defeats.
Yeah, I mean, first off, Dustin Poirier is an absolute legend. One of the nicest people I've met when I was down in American Top Team for a little bit. Had mutual friends. Always rooted for Dustin Poirier. I was down there when he was who the hell was he fighting? Oh, God. Kid Diego from The Ultimate Fighter or something like that. I forget what his name was. But anyways, Dustin Poirier has really just molded himself into a Hall of Famer. I mean, really, 21-7-1 inside the UFC is absolutely incredible. You know what you're going to get from Dustin. His striking has improved over the years. His boxing is very, very crisp. He can low kick you. He can get takedowns. He can submit you. But, his Achilles heel has been that submission grappling. If you'd like to really kind of pick apart his record, which is very difficult to do so. You see the strength of schedule, everybody he's fought. He's the most battle-tested guy out there. And I really love Dustin Poirier. I don't like how he's returning. Well, I mean, it is sometime. I thought it was actually sooner. But, I mean, last July against Justin Gaethje, suffered a head kick defeat. And now is coming back against a very, very dangerous opponent in Benoit Saint Denis. So it's like, man, you're not really doing yourself any favors. But when you are at the top, you kind of have your options are limited. I would have much rather seen something like the Nate Diaz fight happen or materialize, something where it's a softer matchup as like a get back fight. I understand Dustin Poirier probably doesn't have many fights left. I totally blanked on the fact that this was 5 rounds, Jason. With it being 5 rounds, and with there being speculation out there that Benoit Saint Denis is suffering staph infection because of a small scab on his head, which you can't think that that's staph infection. Like, we're getting punched, kicked, we're getting our heads raked against the fence, we're getting scraped from Velcro. Like, there's so much that can happen. So if he does have staph infection and he's hiding it from the medical personnel, you would think over 5 rounds that his cardio would completely deplete and diminish, and that Dustin Poirier would be live for a later finish. Absolutely. I don't have any reason to think that that is the case. It pains me to say that I think Benoit Saint Denis is just a very mean, brutal fighter for the division. Absolutely undefeated. Nobody's been able to handle him. Nobody's been able to take him outside of the second round. And I actually think Benoit Saint Denis is going to finish Dustin Poirier. He has multiple ways to do it. He can take him down and submit him. He can ground and pound him. He could also knock him out on the feet, especially if Dustin Poirier's chin is not, back up to where it used to be. That is a lot of damage on Dustin Poirier, but with damage comes experience, and he's so battle tested. There are plenty of fights you can go back and look at Dustin Poirier and see where like we were counting him out, and then he kind of had a gut check performance and came through. The Dan Hooker fight was an absolute war, and it didn't look good in moments in that. But yeah, with all that being said, I think this is a must-have. I really prefer this matchup over the main event for DFS. Cannot argue with you if you want to get behind Dustin Poirier because of the name value. As far as momentum, I think Benoit Saint Denis has all the momentum in the world. I thought Ismail Bonfim was a very, very talented prospect, and he cut through him like a knife through butter. And then Thiago Moises and Matt Frivola. As long as he doesn't get so wild that he gets caught on an exchange with Dustin Poirier, I think that this is a very winnable fight for Benoit Saint Denis. So I'm going to be going with Benoit Saint Denis at 8,900. I think that he ends up finishing Dustin Poirier, and it pains me to say.
Yeah, the one thing when I saw the ownership projections on Benoit Saint Denis, I was like, "Ooh, man, that's a big number." I do think the clear path to Dustin Poirier winning this fight is drawing this fight out into the third, fourth, and fifth round to see what does a minute 20, a minute 23, 24, Benoit Saint Denis look like. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I think this is classic UFC matchmaking in terms of, the up and coming rising prospect in a division. Benoit Saint Denis, 28 years old. You're talking about you're entering your prime at the 155 pound division at that weight, at that age. Dustin Poirier, 35 years old. He's talked about this week. He knows he doesn't have much left. He understands that he is on the back nine of his career. And I thought it was one of the more interesting things he said in his interview with Brett Okamoto was the fact that he knows he leaves something in the cage every time he goes in there, and he really started talking about his family and saying he goes I just don't know, I lose a piece of myself every time I go in there. So looking at the prop bets over here, the TKO KO props plus 350 for Dustin Poirier, plus 300 for Saint Denis. Saint Denis by submission plus 150, plus 1,000 for Dustin Poirier, and then the decision prop is plus 700 for Dustin Poirier and plus 650 for Benoit Saint Denis. Over on Prize Picks, you do have for Benoit Saint Denis 47.5 significant strikes, fight time of 11 minutes, takedowns of 2.5, and a fantasy score of 98.5. And Pete, like, as I look at that takedown prop of 2.5, like, the question is he going to need 3 takedowns if his game plan is to go the submission route?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? Like, sometimes all you need is one, and we've seen Habib Nurmagomedov, do it, and Dustin Poirier looked to counter with a guillotine that was very, very close, and Habib countered and was able to then use that to get into an advantageous position, made Poirier turn to his belly, which exposed his back, took his back, and then proceeded to choke him out. That physicality that Habib Nurmagomedov had is oddly similar to what Benoit Saint Denis has. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm going to say. Like, you can't compare the two's careers, obviously. Benoit Saint Denis is still on the come up. But when I'm talking about physicality and the grappling, he is manhandling everybody. This guy is so damn strong. Benoit Saint Denis is so damn talented, and debuting on short notice against Eliza Zaleski dos Santos, he went in there and had an absolute war. And when the roles were reversed and he was getting beaten up, he showed how tough he was, which that fight should have been stopped numerous times. But there is a situation where Dustin Poirier exposes that same old Benoit Saint Denis. Mm-hmm. It's just he has to overcome the grappling. Eliza Zaleski dos Santos is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And then you're talking about on your UFC debut, short notice, looking to go in there and beat a guy who also spinning wheel kicked Sean Strickland. You know what I mean? So like that was a massive step up in competition. I'm picking Benoit Saint Denis here, but I would recommend getting to some Dustin Poirier at 7,300.
Especially, I think Dustin is a great leverage spot if you're looking to play that ownership game this week here. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here for the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, we're here every week of a UFC fight card to break it down. Scary Creations over in chat says, if you don't afford to order UFC 299 or 300, which one would you order? I don't think there's a bad decision in terms of either one of those. I might slightly lean 299 at this moment.
Yeah, I'd lean 299 just because there are some fighters that I really, really enjoy watching fight. Dustin Poirier is one of them. Jack Della Maddalena, Sean O'Malley. It's a hell of a card. But yeah, I don't think you can really go wrong.
Yeah, and you talk about one of those reasons for me to want to be sitting in front of that television tomorrow night is watching the UFC debut of Michael Page as he steps in here to take on Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, a minus 135 betting favorite, plus 115 for Michael Page. Page is 7,700 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. And for Kevin Holland, he's 8,500 on DK and $16 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I think we wanted to see Michael Page in the UFC for quite some time. And as a guy who's very familiar with his Bellator career, he's one of the best strikers in the world. He really is. He's one of the best strikers in the world. If you don't know who Michael Page is, you are in for a treat from an entertainment standpoint. On the opposite side, you also have Kevin Holland, one of the most entertaining fighters within the UFC and within the welterweight division as well. Because they're so entertaining, I almost feel like this fight could not deliver. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of skeptical on how this fight actually plays out for DFS. I think they will go in there. They'll both have moments, but I feel like it could be a taunting competition. It could be, just they're talking about they want to have Michael Page said this is going to be like having a live podcast in the UFC's octagon. It's like that's cool and all, but bite down on that mouthpiece and get to work. And try to make a statement in your UFC debut, right? Like Kevin Holland, you beat him, you're ranked probably, and you're probably on your way up towards getting some matchups that the UFC would probably want to put together. Wonderboy Thompson is one of them, and then after that, you can start talking about getting to title contention. It's an interesting fight. I feel like the masses might really flock to this fight from an ownership standpoint. Haven't necessarily seen if I'm correct. No, seems kind of like where I would project it. But I'm kind of surprised, to be honest, because it's two notable names and people are expecting a finish. And I almost don't expect a finish because Kevin Holland has the easiest path to victory in the world. He's utilizing his wrestling, but he will not do that. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Travis Lutter. He could go out there and submit Michael Venom Page. He has an excellent Darce choke. I just don't foresee him using his grappling at all. And he will go out there and test Michael Venom Page and try to welcome him to the UFC. And I actually think that, Holland having fought Stephen Thompson in the past shows Michael Page what he can get away with. And Michael Page, I think, is going to utilize my big old dog. Michael Venom, you heard that? Michael Venom Page.
I can see him.
Yeah, he's huge nowadays. Michael Venom Page is going to kind of dance his way to a victory, to a decision victory. So, I'll get to both sides, but I'm kind of thinking this fight's going to underwhelm.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned about the fact of the grappling advantage that clearly Kevin Holland has in this matchup. And, one of the things that you mentioned about Michael Page, I'll throw one at you. What? If Michael Page pulls off a highlight reel knockout, you know who's going to hate Michael Page?
Who?
Belal Muhammad.
Oh, I know.
Because then I see the UFC going, screw it. Leon Edwards, Michael Page, headlines a pay-per-view in London.
They won't do that. Off of one fight? God damn, they better not.
I would not be shocked. Look, I'll say this. If on Saturday night they do not announce Leon Edwards, Belal Muhammad, main event, UFC 301 in Brazil, and Page goes out there and has a highlight reel knockout, just telling you. And by the way, Page and Thompson actually have become really good friends over about the past year, so they really don't want to fight each other.
I think the UFC might push that, though.
And of course they will.
I think they're going to push that because of Stephen Thompson backing out from the Michel Pereira fight, and then when Pereira missed weight and he didn't want to accept it when he was like 6 pounds overweight or something like that. But if I was a matchmaker, I'd want to see those two strikers go in there. I mean, like you'd want to see Raymond Daniels against any of those guys as well if he ever crossed over into the UFC.
Yeah. Look at the prop bets on this one. TKO KO are both plus 450. The submission prop for Kevin Holland is plus 550, plus 2,500 for Page. I think the decision props is really, I think, where if you're going to play the prop game on this one, this is where you look at Kevin Holland plus 200, Michael Page plus 225. And then over on Prize Picks, Kevin Holland's significant strike number 62.5, fantasy score 82.5. I don't really love either one of those props on Prize Picks. If you told me I had to play one or the other, I might go under 62.5 significant strikes land for Kevin Holland.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Kevin Holland plays around too much. Like he plays around way too much, and he plays around in the striking department with guys that are not at the Michael Page pedigree. And Michael Page's striking pedigree is significant compared to the rest of the division. So my prediction of the fight, Michael Page wins a decision. The crowd boos at times. We laugh at times because they both mock each other, but it doesn't result in an excellent DFS score.
One of the comments in chat said, "Would Ian Gary throw a fit if he was jumped by MVP?" I don't think Ian Gary and the UFC have the greatest relationship. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
I think there's some issues there. One of the things I thought was very interesting was a former UFC PR director tweeted before his fight with Jeff Neal that Ian Gary did 0 interviews in Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'm part of the UFC,
that's a bad sign.
If I'm part of the UFC, I'm like, dude, you're killing the product and you're hurting yourself and you're hurting us. Who the hell do you think you are?
Well, let's get into the Jason and Petr not going to agree with each other moment of the fight card, and that is Gilbert Burns taking on Jack Della Maddalena. Jack Della is a minus 170 betting favorite, plus 140 for Gilbert Burns. Burns 7,600 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. Jack Della Maddalena is 8,600 on DK and $18 on FanDuel. Pete,
what a matchup! What a matchup! I hate that these guys are fighting because I really, really do love Gilbert Burns. And you already know I've been talking about Jack Della Maddalena for years now. Talked about Hamza Chimaev for years. Talk about Tom Aspinall for years. Jack Della Maddalena was a flag plant for me as well. And I'm sticking by him, man. I am sticking by him. I do think that I think he's one of the best strikers inside the UFC. And I think he has the best boxing in the UFC, hands down, in the best boxing. He probes at you with his jab to unleash unbelievable combinations. Digs to the body, goes back upstairs. Will utilize the same hand, double up on it, and he can put out anybody's lights. He has crazy, crazy power for the division. We've seen it showcased in the past, but we've also seen his poor fight IQ in the past. And I'll tell you what, since we started this podcast, it's very difficult for me to say fight IQ. I almost naturally say fight HQ nowadays. But Jack Della Maddalena's fight IQ is horrible when it came in his previous performances of jumping guillotine, like against a short notice replacement in Basel Hafez. He pulled guillotine. I don't even know how many times. I lost count. And after you pull guillotine and you almost get it or fail during it, and then your opponent is on top and you basically almost lose the round, your corner already tells you to bail on the guillotine attempts and tells you to kind of let that go. And you go out there and you're opportunistic. You see it and you try to attempt it again. And he kept going to the well and making the same elementary mistake. And that's where I do think that there is a vast, vast skill gap between the two. Jack Della Maddalena's grappling is nowhere near Gilbert Burns. And I would say that Gilbert Burns' striking is better than Jack Della Maddalena's grappling. So it all comes down to what Gilbert Burns shows up. Burns has been through the ringer. He's fought some of the best names in the world. Gilbert Burns can go out there, throw heat on the feet, shoot a double, pin Jack Della Maddalena to the cage, and then get into a whole grappling. But he needs to be like nonstop with it. He can't attempt one or two and then just abandon the game plan, because if he strikes with Jack Della Maddalena, yes, Burns has some power, but I don't think that Burns will drop Jack Della Maddalena. I think Jack Della Maddalena will eat him up with his jab, and the jab will just be will set everything else up, and we'll see Gilbert Burns get knocked out by Jack Della Maddalena. Basil Chavez had Maddalena in all sorts of grappling scenarios and problems, and previous opponents have as well. On Dana White's Contender Series, you saw Maddalena put in an arm triangle choke, which was some time ago. Ramazan Nameev had him almost in a Darce choke and finished the fight. His fight IQ is questionable when it comes to grappling, but I do think that this kid has the goods, and I think he's going to be champion of the world. I really do. I'm like crazy big on Jack Della Maddalena, and I think the Basil Hafez success was more because of Maddalena's poor decisions than Hafez's actual skill. So I'm going to be going Jack Della Maddalena. Hopefully be a smarter fighter. If he pulls guillotine on Gilbert Burns, I'm going to punch my TV. I'm telling you right now, because that's just silly. But yeah, give me Jack Della Maddalena here at 8,600 to knock out Gilbert Burns. But this is a pivotal matchup for the slate because Burns can easily win this.
And that's why Gilbert Burns is one of my favorite underdogs on this slate, and it is because of that grappling ability. If he can get this one to the ground, Basil Hafez was 3 of 20, had nearly 7 minutes of control time, and to me, is if I am that Kill Cliff FC corner, that this has been the mindset the entire fight camp is we want to take this matchup to the ground, we want to make him uncomfortable, wear him down, and to me, it's because of that grappling upside of why I do like Gilbert Burns in this matchup. But you bring up a lot of great points about if this ends up being a striking matchup, no question, then it is favored Jack Della Maddalena, but I'm more counting on the fact of Gilbert Burns is going to get this to the ground, potentially get that submission finish, which is, by the way, plus 350 on the props there, plus 150 for Maddalena to win by TKO KO. And then if you look at decision, plus 300 for Jack Della, plus 450 for Gilbert Burns. Jack Della Maddalena over on Prize Picks. Significant strike, 67.5. Fantasy score, 82.5. I would not say I'm really loving either one of those numbers over there. If I was going to play one or the other, I'd probably be more looking at playing the more than 82.5 fantasy score, just because, if he would get some knockdowns or maybe he can get a finish, I think he should be able to eclipse that score. But something I really don't love in terms of that one. But, to me, it's about finding, I would rather go to a Gilbert Burns than a Dustin Poirier, even though Dustin Poirier is in a 5-round matchup, just because of the potential grappling that he does have in his back pocket.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to get behind an underdog who has grappling upside, right? Like that with the DraftKings scoring, it's broken for grapplers with control time mixed with takedowns. It was even more broken with advances in the past, and now you still have reversals. I think that Gilbert Burns can make this look easy, but sometimes Gilbert Burns likes to test himself and prove that he's an excellent striker. He is. He's very good. He's knocked a lot of people out in training. And it's just like, he does not constantly go to the well. The only few times we've seen him go to the well like that, Jorge Masvidal, 4 of 6 in the takedown department, wins a decision. Saw him do it real quick against Neil Magny. Stephen Thompson, 3 of 6 in the takedown department, scored 83. Had 7 minutes of control time. I just feel like with Jack Della Maddalena making adjustments from that Basil Hafez, his coaches hopefully slapping the hell out of him and then getting that guillotine out of his mind, working with Craig Jones in the build-up for multiple fights. I think that we're going to see Jack Della Maddalena shine here.
Next up, we got our opening matchup of the pay-per-view. It'll be at bantamweight. Got Petr Yan taking on Song Yadong. Song Yadong plus 105 betting underdog, minus 125 for Yan. Yan is A300 on DK, 16 on FanDuel. And for Song Yadong, he's 7,900 on DK and $15 on FanDuel.
Would you be surprised if Song Yadong is the first person to stop Petr Yan? Because I don't necessarily think I would be surprised.
No.
Petr Yan shells up a lot with a high guard defense. Tries to do a lot of catch counters. And what I mean by that is as he gets hit, he tries to counter back immediately, which can catch people, right on the chin if they do not bring their hands back to their chin. Song Yadong is very, very powerful. You mentioned pre-show how Corey Sandhagen talked about how Song Yadong is the most powerful puncher that he's faced or hit him the hardest that he's ever been hit, which is quite admirable when you look at Corey Sandhagen's career. I do think the time away could be beneficial for Petr Yan, if I'm being honest. Kind of being in the ringer and being in the grind. Maybe he was worn down. This is a guy that I thought was going to be champ for quite some time. but it goes to show you how deep bantamweight is. It goes to show you how styles make fights. I thought Petr Yan was going to, knock out Merab Dvalishvili because we saw, Marlon Moraes hurt Merab Dvalishvili in the past, and that shot never came. Like Petr Yan, like, dude, throw it. He's kind of like very similar to Marlon Vera, where it's like, okay, man, let it go. Like, throw it already. You're down 2-3 rounds. The fight's over. If that happens here in this 3-round bout, like, I don't know. It could be curtains for his UFC career. But like, he needs to go out there as a changed man. He needs to really kind of reevaluate everything. I'm sure he has. Best way to beat Song Yadong is incorporating takedowns and not necessarily shooting double legs, because he's going to be very well prepared for that, working with Team Alpha Male. Song Yadong, one of the brightest prospects in the bantamweight division. But Petr Yan has some of the best trips, throws, and kick counters in the game. And I really think that he can actually separate himself from Song Yadong in close rounds by incorporating some trips and some takedowns. And he chains them well together. He really does. He has an awesome takedown from the back where he's around the waist and he'll split his feet, turn, and kind of throw them. I think that Petr Yan, from a craftiness standpoint, has all the skills to win this decision. I think Song Yadong has the higher finishing upside, and Song Yadong could clearly be the first person to knock out Petr Yan. I'm kind of getting to both fighters a part of my lineups, but breaking the fight down, I was like, okay, it's just going to go the distance, and maybe it doesn't score well, but something in the 80s is kind of tough to get away from at that 8,300 to 7,900, and I can kind of see that happening in a very, very pivotal bantamweight bout. So give me Petr Yan to win a decision, and I can't believe I'm saying that because the man has been unsuccessful in multiple fights. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about Aljamain Sterling, Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili. So I'm going to be picking Petr Yan here to win a decision, but Song Yadong, one of my highest exposed underdogs on the slate.
And when you look at that decision prop for Yan, that is plus 140, plus 180 for Yadong to win via decision, plus 180. If you look at TKO KO prop, plus 450 for Song Yadong, plus 500 for Yan. Over on Prize Picks, Yan 66.5 significant strikes, fantasy score of 83.5. Would not mind going more than 66.5 significant strikes, just because I would imagine that the fight probably does play out on the feet. But I do like taking a little underdog shot here on Song Yadong. But it's also one of those things where in a 15-minute fight, as we're talking about, DFS here, I don't know if it necessarily has the component to be a high-scoring fight.
I agree, unless we have a finish from Song Yadong or Petr Yan utilizing takedowns, and that's like what I think makes him so damn good. 1 of 5 against Merab Dvalishvili. Obviously, he's not going to be out wrestling Merab. He got taken down 39 times, 38 of them or something stupid.
I want to say he was like 11 of 49 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on, like, yeah, that's crazy. I'm looking on Fantasy Crunch right now. He defended 38 takedowns, so that's absolutely crazy. Look what Merab's doing to everybody. 6 of 13 in the takedown in a 3-round fight against Sean O'Malley. That's very interesting, and kind of what I thought. Like, if he got the nod there, we're talking about 101.32. Granted, in other 3-round fights that went the distance, 78 against Jimmy Rivera, 79 against John Dodson, 78 against Jinsu Song. Those are back in 2018 and 2019. But there is potential for him to lace up those wrestling shoes in a very unique way that Song Yadong might not be prepared for.
Sammy mentioned Chad. He goes, can you recommend Song as the last man in? I don't mind it just because of that knockout upside that he does have there. Let's move over to our feature prelim matchup, the heavyweight matchup, a key matchup in the heavyweight division, as we've got Curtis Blaydes taking on Jailton Almeida. Of course, this matchup was supposed to take place in Brazil back in November. Curtis Blaydes had to pull out of the fight due to an injury, and this is a straight up pick 'em, minus 110 on both sides. Curtis Blaydes is 8,200 on DK, 15 on FanDuel. Jailton Almeida 8,000 on DK and 16 on FanDuel.
Holy moly, this fight's going to be crazy. And the fight's going to be crazy because it's a heavyweight bout between two of the best wrestlers in the division. Well, anytime you have two wrestlers going up against, or two grapplers going up against each other, usually what happens is it turns into a striking matchup. Everything on film shows us that there's more to Curtis Blades' striking than Jailton Almeida. So I understand why he's a slight favorite over Jailton Almeida. Also, he's had a pretty successful career within the heavyweight division, 12-4-1. If you cannot knock out Curtis Blades, he is just a terror to deal with in the heavyweight division. Athletic, good wrestling, good pace, trains at elevation. So like certain qualities that like really, really are going to automatically break most heavyweights. Jailton Almeida is a force, man. Jailton Almeida is something, I don't know if we've ever seen this, if I'm being honest. I don't know if we've ever seen Jailton Almeida, a guy fighting basically at his natural weight class, would probably be the 225-pound champ if they ever had a 225-pound division. I do think that 265, he's just very, very athletic and gets away with his athleticism within a division that is pretty slow and plodding. He's faster than these guys. He's still strong as hell. So, like, even though he's not the biggest heavyweight, he's out muscling people. His grappling is tenacious. His ground and pound is very good. And I love the way that he utilizes his grappling to set up his ground and pound, and vice versa, where his ground and pound will set up his submissions. So this is what I love. My coach taught me that as well. You pound them out, make them make a decision. After they make a decision, you submit them, or you continue to pound them out, and then you start to work into a late submission. So I think that Jailton Almeida is going to be the play for me. There's nothing that I've seen for me to want to pick against them. The Derek Lewis 25-minute decision was something that probably should have never happened, and probably happens 1 out of 100 times. 6 of 15 in the takedown department. Showcase good toughness, good submission attempts. Controlled 21 of 25 minutes of Derek Lewis. That is absurd. Didn't really throw a lot of significant strikes because he was worried about gassing out in that bout. But if you look at his box score, he scored over 104 in every single fight. 118, 113, 120, 125, 104, and 134. What happens if Curtis Blades gets put on his back? We've seen in some grappling situations in a dogfight, Curtis Blades' defensive wrestling not look the sharpest, and definitely not look as good as his offensive wrestling. If Almeida's forced to strike, does Blades knock him out? Blades doesn't really knock anybody out or even knock him down. I was looking back trying to find some evidence like Blades can do it. Just don't see it, man. Like, the only person he knocked out on the feet was what? Chris Daukaus? Chris Daukaus has been knocked out by everybody nowadays. Jailton Almeida, I think, could easily knock out Curtis Blades on the feet because Blades' chin is shot. And then also Almeida has this significant jiu-jitsu edge. Blades takes people down and just holds them. The only person he decided to ground and pound was Alistair Overeem. So, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I think that I'm going to be going with Jailton Almeida here, but I don't hate you for the Curtis Blades slight favorite call, but give me Jailton Almeida 8,000.
My counterpoint on that, Pete, would be is what happens if Jailton Almeida can't get to the match and he can't utilize his grappling. I mean, to me, one of my most frustrating things with Curtis Blades is the fact of he has this tremendous wrestling ability, this tremendous ability to get people to the ground. But it's like, do you not go to jiu-jitsu class?
That's what I'm saying, dude. That's why, like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Like, I don't understand how you are in the UFC and you do not have an arsenal of submissions, an arsenal of strikes, an arsenal of takedowns, and then you also have defensive situations for all that as well. Like, I don't know if he has zero confidence in it, or if, like, every time in jiu-jitsu class he goes to go for that stuff, he gets subbed. But if this hits the mat, I think that we're going to see, like, even Jailton Almeida, if he goes on his back, I see him getting an underhook. I see him working up to a single leg. I see him, going to a body lock or picking that ankle or going to the knee and then trying to just, like, reverse some positions. So I just don't see the same thing from Curtis Blades. He's a dog. He has beaten a lot of people within this division. The questionable win over Tom Aspinall, KO, TKO over Daukaus, KO, TKO over Junior Dos Santos, Abdurrahimov, Alistair Overeem. Like the only other person he's like actually knocked down besides Chris Daukaus is Alexei Oleinik, and Oleinik does not have a chin either. So I'm going to be going with Jailton Almeida to really just put a stamp on that he's going to be fighting for the title within the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, Curtis Blades to me is kind of that test to show you, are you a top 5 type guy in the division? If you can beat him, you're clearly a top 5 guy. Yeah. If you can't beat him, you're probably not going to be there. I will say this on the betting side, the prop bets, the Blades wins via decision plus 350 is probably the one that sticks out to me the most. By the way, Almeida via decision plus 165. Almeida via submission plus 300. Almeida via TKO KO plus 400. TKO KO for Curtis Blades. He's plus 200 over Prize Picks. Curtis Blades significant strike prop 27.5. Fight time 9 3/4, and a fantasy score of 74.5. I kind of think this fight's going to hit the third round. So I kind of like that going more than 9 3/4 fight time minutes.
I don't know what the hell I like with those lines. I got to be honest, because I could see this going many different ways. I got so much faith in Jailton Almeida, but like this is a fraud test, and we see fighters get fraud checked all the time.
Oh, I mean, fraud check. We're gonna talk about somebody later on the show whether he's a fraud check. We can only look at 15 seconds of fight film.
I know, but you know what I mean? Like, this is what we have to get on here and talk and discuss these fights. So, like, you know, from what we see, it should point to Jailton Almeida. I mean, he's giving me no reason to pick against him.
Yeah.
But this is a massive step up of competition. I mean, look at Joe Pyfer. I say it again. Look at Joe Pyfer in a 5-round bout. Granted, that's 5 rounds. Goes up there against Jack Hermanson. Looks really good early. And then just gets dog walked the final 3 rounds.
Yeah. Yeah. I you know, it's one of these fights where I don't think you're going to feel going good on either side just because of, I mean, it's a 50-50 fight. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, we got a matchup. We got returning. Most people would know her as Katlyn Chookagian. She has now taken her husband's last name, Cerminara. Of course, he's a wrestling coach up in Jersey. She's taking on Maycee Barber. If you've not seen the quotes that she had this week, I mean, man, I know, Pete, you can talk about this. I mean, the fact of you go through everything away from the cage. Kudos for her talking about it. I don't know how many people would want to talk about that. So, you know, part of my mind says I think about breaking down the fight is kind of, you know, where is she at mentally in terms of this? Maybe, you know, we'll see. She is a plus 170 betting underdog minus 200 for Barber. Barber 800 DK, $18 on FanDuel, and for Katlyn she's 7,400 DK and $11 on FanDuel.
Yeah, man. Like, you know, being a dad, it really bothers me when I hear stuff like that. Like, puts tears in my eyes. So, like, you know, all well wishes to Katlyn Cerminara and her husband. You know, that's a very sad situation that they had to deal with, and I applaud her for talking about it, but I also applaud her for getting back into the cage. Granted, she needs some normalcy in her life and some joy during some difficult times, and you know, she wants to get back into the fire, and she's fighting Maycee Barber, who's a very, very hungry fighter. A fighter that I've kind of had a difficult time projecting in the UFC's octagon because, like, I think she's very, very raw. As you know, on one hand, she does have potential, but she makes a ton of mistakes, and her fight IQ at times is just completely absent. I think that Maycee Barber is probably the meaner fighter of the two. She makes up with athleticism, whereas, you know, in some spots she has some gaps in skill. Where I do think that Katlyn Cerminara is probably better technically everywhere than Maycee Barber, if I'm being honest. People hate on Katlyn Cerminara's striking from the outside, but she's very good at range management. She will utilize decent footwork. She trains with one of the best jiu-jitsu teams, with John Danaher. Her husband is a fantastic wrestling coach. When I'd say fantastic wrestling coach, and that was on full display against Valentina Shevchenko. Not Valentina, the other, Antonina Shevchenko. But, like, I actually think there's a world where Katlyn Cerminara goes out there and shows how good her wrestling can be. It's just she's somewhat gun shy to getting out there. Like, there's only one fight where she really went out there and showcased it. I think that there's an easier path to winning fights when she utilizes her takedowns. And clearly Maycee Barber can get taken down. Maycee Barber can also beat, you know, be the one to land takedowns, but like she's very dangerous and powerful on the feet. And I don't know, man. I actually don't mind the underdog shot on Katlyn Cerminara. The issue is how well does she score? I don't think she's going to score all that well because when she is on the feet, she's looking to keep distance between her opponent and her, and capitalize only on certain moments. Maycee Barber is probably a fighter I'm not going to get too much of. Could she finish Katlyn Cerminara? Absolutely, especially if Cerminara's head's not in the game and she's not there on fight night and she's kind of just emotional and just makes some mistakes, whereas in the past she's been very calculated and cerebral. Totally can happen. 8,800 is a hefty price tag for Maycee Barber. I'm going to let other people kind of chase that a little bit. I think the ownership is about where I'd have it. I might even have a little bit more than that. But I'll be picking Maycee Barber to win a decision. 2-1. But in moments, I think it's going to be a lot closer than what the actual outcome is. So Maycee Barber to win a decision. But I really don't hate the Katlyn Cerminara underdog call. Just don't really know what to expect from her.
And when you look at the betting props on here for Katlyn, the TKO KO plus 1,600, plus 2,000 win by submission. She has plus 215 to win via decision. For Maycee Barber, plus 350 to win by TKO KO, plus 1,400 to win by submission, plus 100 to win via decision. Over at Prize Picks for Barber, 60.5 significant strikes, 73.5 fantasy score. Not in love with either one of those props.
No. Yeah, me either, because it's just I would say like each week, right? I kind of talk about the wild card for each fight, for each fight card. I would probably put Katlyn Cerminara in that category of like she is a wild card. No, I would probably say not many people are going to be putting their money on her. Not many people are going to want to be backing her here, especially hear about all the outside, obstacles she's dealing with. That could be a distraction inside the cage as well. Probably people, only a part of her camp are the ones backing her and thinking she's going to beat Maycee Barber here. I do think the line's a little wide, so there is value on Cerminara, but I do think that Barber probably gets it done.
Next up, we got Mateusz Gamrot taking on Rafael dos Anjos. Gamrot is a minus 500 betting favorite, plus 360 for RDA. Gamrot, 9,400 DK, $21 on FanDuel. And for RDA, he's 6,800 DK and $9 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a historical nightmare matchup for Rafael dos Anjos, right? Like Rafael dos Anjos, lightweight terror, dabbled in welterweight as well. Very, very good southpaw, very, very good jiu-jitsu, good wrestling against most fighters. Offensively he can wrestle, and he can wrestle out of bad positions as well. It's just defensively he's been ragdolled and controlled by a lot of people. I mean, you can go and you can look at his record and you can see Vicente Luque did it. Vicente Luque, a guy from Killcliff FC, not necessarily known for his wrestling, known for his great hands and good submission skills, but not his wrestling. Just completely ragdolled Rafael dos Anjos over 5 rounds. You can look and you see Michael Chiesa, Kevin Lee at times, Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington. Granted, we're talking about some of the best fighters in the world, and that's why Rafael dos Anjos is still a test for a lot of fighters. Could Rafael dos Anjos go out there and pick up a victory over Mateusz Gamrot? Absolutely. He's going to need to brutalize the leg of Mateusz Gamrot, stuff some takedowns. If he gets taken down, reverse position, and just maintain activity, because Gamrot, despite wrestling so well and being so good, doesn't throw a lot of strikes. And him not throwing a lot of strikes can sometimes not result in judges wanting to award close rounds to him because of the damage criteria. I mean, if you look at the debut against Guram Kutateladze, that's exactly what happened in that situation. I mean, he scored 5 of 16 takedowns, had 3.5 minutes of control time, scored 55 in a loss, and was not awarded the victory because of the damage criteria. Split decision over Jailton Turner, almost lost that bout. 42 significant strikes thrown, 4 of 12 in the takedown department, 6 minutes and 52 seconds of control time, scored 85-96. So, I think Gamrot should go out there and rack up takedown after takedown after takedown. And if you have X amount of takedowns and control time, a couple damaging strikes are not going to swing the round for Rafael dos Anjos. But if Rafael dos Anjos is able to reverse out of position and wrestle up and wrestle out, and maybe attempt some submissions, or maybe knock him down, then you could be talking about Rafael dos Anjos possibly spoiling Mateusz Gamrot. But I think it's way too much to actually happen. And ownership's about right. I'm surprised Mateusz Gamrot is not coming in heavier based on his tremendous takedown upside. I'll be picking Mateusz Gamrot to win here at 9,400, but I mean, Rafael dos Anjos is a bottom of the barrel. Hopefully, just gets a damage criteria decision at 6,800 for a few of my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at the takedown upside for Gamrot in this one. By the way, Gamrot to win via TKO KO plus 350, by submission plus 900, minus 175 to win via decision. For RDA plus 2,000 win by TKO KO, plus 1,600 to win via submission, plus 550 to win via decision. Over on Prize Picks, Gamrot significant strikes 45.5, takedown 4, and a 90.5 fantasy score. Like, whew. He might eclipse that 4 number easily, but man, that is a big number play.
Yeah, so I mean, when I was going, I was looking, and I've been doing a lot of deep diving on scores and previous scores and all that stuff because I had some time at work on break. I was surprised that Mateusz Gamrot didn't necessarily score higher than what in my mind, I had projected. I think, like, in my mind, I had this Colby Covington type of ceiling. For whatever reason, it's just not happening. And perhaps it's because he has better control than some of these guys. But like in some of these decisions, and then remind you, this is only 15 minutes. So 85-96 against Turner, 38-01 in a loss. Okay, so call it 68 if he was given the nod. 106 in a 5-round bout against Arman Tsarukyan. And 55 against Guram Kutateladze. Call it 85 if he was given the decision. So like, maybe he doesn't get over 90, and maybe this is a situation where I was expecting to see box scores like 115, 120, all this and that, and it's like, if there's a prop out there for takedowns, as you mentioned, 4, I might. 4 is tough, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's 3.5, that's clearly more. But I don't know, man. Like I like Gamrot, but at the same time, when I'm looking at these other options, I think that there might actually be some higher ceiling with some of these other fighters.
Next up, we got Kyler Phillips taking on Pedro Munhoz. Kyler Phillips is a minus 220 betting favorite, plus 180 for Munhoz. Munhoz 7,100 DK, $11 on FanDuel, and for Kyler Phillips, he's 9,100 on DK and $20 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what's going on with this Pedro Munhoz love. Maybe people are onto something. I just don't know why he's favored by some sharps as much as he is. I think that Kyler Phillips kind of has him in a lot of areas, right? Like Kyler Phillips on the outside, better distance striker, a bigger guy, a longer guy, better kicks. Pedro Munhoz has excellent low kicks. I don't think that, we'll be seeing Kyler Phillips there to be hit by those. Kyler Phillips can also grapple offensively, grapple defensively, avoid bad situations because of his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu IQ. Whereas a lot of times Pedro Munhoz has powerful boxing. If people make a mistake and they leave their neck out there, Pedro Munhoz capitalizes with one of the best guillotines in the division and in the UFC. I just don't see Kyler Phillips making these mistakes. So like maybe a low volume decision could possibly be there. And maybe not in a low volume, but like I think Marlon Vera is much more plotting than a mobile Kyler Phillips. Against Marlon Vera, he scored 45. So like, I just think that Kyler Phillips can actually go out there and put a high pace, at least for 2 rounds, because that cardio in the 3rd round is suspect. I think that he could go out there and just kind of put a big gap between him and Pedro Munhoz and coast in the 3rd. I'm sure he's working on it, though, working on that cardio, but it does seem to kind of be like an Achilles heel is, starts off great, starts to fade as the fight goes on. So give me Kyler Phillips to win a decision. I like him here from a contrarian standpoint, and I like him from a contrarian standpoint just because I think that Munhoz's aggressiveness could actually increase the volume from Kyler Phillips.
Yeah, I mean, we look at those 9,000 options. You do like that ownership that he has going for him right there. By the way, he is plus 450 win by TKO KO, plus 1,000 via submission, and then minus 120 win via decision for Munhoz, plus 1,100 win by TKO KO, plus 1,400 via submission, plus 300 via decision on Prize Picks. Phillips, 74.5 significant strikes, 1.5 takedowns, 89.5 fantasy score. That 1.5 takedown prop is the one that I would say I would look at the most.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to look at the significant strikes. 74 against Holland Paiva, 80 against Marcelo Rojo, 72 against Raoni Barcelos. I think that he can eclipse that. I mean, this guy's thrown 187, 164, 132, and 142. And you talk about Pedro Munhoz made Marlon Vera look like a volume machine. So I think that Kyler Phillips can go out there and put volume on him.
Next up, we got a matchup that very well could be very key to becoming optimal in these big GPP lineups. That's Ian Cutelaba taking on Philipe Lins. Cutelaba minus 125 betting fair, plus 105 for Lins. Lins 700 on DK, 14 on FanDuel. And for Cutelaba, 8,400 on DK and 17 on FanDuel, Pete.
I think one of the most exposed fights, a part of my lineups, I'm being honest. I think that this fight needs to be a lot more owned than what I'm seeing. Here's the problem. I can't recommend you guys, playing. I can't pick Ian Cutelaba. Like, I cannot pick him because, like, if I was betting a ton of money, I'm not going to be putting on Ian Cutelaba because he's an idiot and he does not make good decisions at all. When he has significant advantages in certain situations, he goes out there and doesn't utilize his best skills. He also can get finished at a very, very high clip. He went out there against Kenny Ngannou and just got smoked and was put in some bad spots, almost submitted at one point. But the one thing that this guy has is slate breaking potential. So as much as it pains me, like as a bettor, I don't think I would necessarily bet Cutelaba because he's at a chalk price as it is. But as for DFS, I think that it makes a ton of sense because when he wins, man, he scores significantly well. Let's say it goes the distance, and I do think that over the course of 15 minutes, he probably has the higher ceiling of the two. Whereas an early finish favors Philipe Lins, in my opinion, due to the volatility of Ian Cutelaba. In a decision win against Jonathan Wilson, scored 66, Cannonier 57. But also we go back here, Dustin Jacoby, 89 in a draw. That's crazy. 127 over Devin Clark. I think there's just tremendous upside. I mean, those fights he attempted 19 and 12 takedowns. If he wants to, he needs to go out there and put Philipe Lins on his back. Because Philipe Lins his striking and his speed and his boxing in general is very difficult to deal with. Cutelaba's defensive striking is awful. His durability is not good. His wrestling, his sambo, his strength is all going to work in a lot of matchups. So I'm going to smash Cutelaba in a lot of my lineups. But as far as a pick, I'm picking Philipe Lins. And I'm picking him because he's from American Top Team, did a split camp between Brazilian Top Team and American Top Team, Coconut Creek, has excellent hands, very, very good hands. He's probably going to be the better striker and definitely the better technician between the two. Has the better jiu-jitsu between the two, between Cutelaba and Lins, and can offensively wrestle as well. My issue is that Lins's chin historically has been bad. Inside the UFC, it's held up outside the Tanner Boser fight. But historically, his chin has been bad. And when I can honestly see Philipe Lins picking apart Cutelaba, landing good combinations, and then something ugly from Cutelaba lands, and it drops Lins down on the ground, or Lins just gets put on his back and eats a couple ground and pound strikes, and Cutelaba walks away with a KO, TKO win. So smash the fight. Tons of exposure to both sides. I'll be officially picking Philipe Lins to pull off the upset here and knock out Cutelaba on the feet. But, be very careful with how you place your money on this bout.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, you can't feel great on either side of this one. I do favor Cutelaba just a tad. I do like that first round upside that he does have there. Move over to our next matchup. We got Michel Pereira taking Michal Oleksiejczuk. Oleksiejczuk a plus 125 betting underdog, minus 150 for Pereira. Pereira a 700 DK, $17 on FanDuel. And for Oleksiejczuk, he's 7,500 on DK and $13 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so I think that this is another sneaky matchup, right? Like sneaky matchup because Michel Pereira, we know him from all of his tricky striking. We know how dynamic he is. He can mix in kicks, aerial attacks, but also he has some sneaky jiu-jitsu and wrestling in his back pocket. And when the going gets tough, we have seen him, resort to it in the past. He went 2 of 2 in the takedown department against Chaos Williams, 3 of 6 against Nico Price, 1 of 4 against Andre Fiallo. And honestly, like I was expecting a breakout knockout performance against Andre Fiallo. And the fact that he was unable to put away Andre Fiallo kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. I'm like, all right. Fiallo's chin's bad, man. Fiallo's chin's very, very bad. So the fact he couldn't get him out of there, it's like, okay, well, and he didn't really look to wrestle all that much. And when he was initially stuffed, it kind of just posed some problems for him. I think that Michal Oleksiejczuk is going to walk him down as he walks down everybody. The issue with Oleksiejczuk is that his Achilles heel is his defensive grappling. So I think this is going to be a barn burner for a little bit. Oleksiejczuk's going to try to walk down Pereira. Pereira on the back foot is a completely different fighter than Pereira in space. And Michal needs to really go out there and crowd Michel Pereira. Just utilize good footwork, dominance in there, and I think that Michel Oleksiejczuk, in my opinion, is going to pick up a victory here at 7,500. But on the flip side is if Michel Pereira goes out there and utilizes his grappling, he could really cut through Oleksiejczuk's grappling like nothing and go out there and submit him. What I like here is that for Oleksiejczuk, he's a guy that was battle tested at 205, and now he's found his true home at 185 pounds, whereas Michel Pereira was a welterweight, killing himself to make welterweight, and now is a middleweight. Mm-hmm. So I do like Oleksiejczuk here as the former bigger guy, but I do think they both finally found their correct weight class. But yes, man, I'm smashing this fight as well. Same with the Philipe Lins and Cutelaba fight.
I love the grappling upside of Michel Pereira in this one. On Prize Picks, I really do like the over 1.5 takedowns for him here. You look at the prop bets over here. TKO KO for Michel Pereira plus 275, Oleksiejczuk plus 240. Submission, Oleksiejczuk plus 2,500, plus 500 for Pereira. And then the decision props plus 250 for Michel. And then for Oleksiejczuk, it is plus 450. But this is one of those, if you're someone who likes to create groups in Fantasy Crunch or any other type of optimizer, like a Takedown City group, Michel Pereira would be in it because I think that's his path to getting the victory here. Now let's get into, is this guy for real or not? Pete, there's not a lot of film to break down.
No. It puts us in a tough spot, right? I mean, like crazy tough spot.
I mean, you look at, obviously he's taking on Josh Parisian, the favorite. Despain here, a minus 360 betting favorite, plus 275 for Parisian. Despain is 9,300 DK, $21 on FanDuel. Parisian 6,900 DK, $10 on FanDuel. This is my concern, is handpicked opponents on the regional scene. Now he's taking on a guy that, I mean, look, Josh Parisian, the low end of the UFC heavyweight division, no question about it. It's one of these things that I almost want to see him do it at this level as opposed to the competition he's previously been facing.
Totally agree. And I don't blame you at all. I mean, we have Robelis Despain, a former Olympian in Taekwondo, who is a mammoth of a man at like 6'7", crazy reach. The longest reach in the UFC, taking on Josh Parisian, who is not athletic, and definitely not the toughest heavyweight out there to debut against. Parisian, if he can get on top of you, he can pose some problems because he's a heavyweight. He knows how to put his weight on you. He's kind of just like below average in every department, in my opinion. And I think he's so hittable on the feet. Robelis Despain, from the small, limited fight film that we were able to break down, he wastes no time. You know what I mean? He wastes no time. And we kind of like that from a DraftKings standpoint because quick win bonus. You get a win in the first minute, you get that quick win bonus. And I think that Robelis Despain has the highest quick win bonus on the entire slate. So that needs to be circled. If let's see where ownership's at. Let me see where this is at. Yeah, I mean,
What you expect?
I get it. I do get it, but man, that's a good amount of the field that could be dead if he finishes him at a minute and 30 seconds and throws 5 significant strikes and has 1 knockdown. You know what I mean? And scores 105. Meanwhile, there are other 9,000 options that are, going to go well above 110 points. So, I mean, it's kind of that balance of risk reward. What do you want to do? I think Robelis Despain dispatches of Josh Parisian inside of 1. I really do. I think you kick him, brutalize him, knock him out, however he wants to. Outside of round 1, we have no idea how he's going to look. I went and dove onto his social media a little bit. He has been training at Gracie Barra for several years now. So it's like Gracie Barra for the past 3 or 4 years, in addition to his home camp. So, he's not a complete fish on the mat, but it's different when you're in a UFC fight, experiencing under the lights in your debut against a guy who has 6 UFC fights. So it could happen. He could get put down, and Josh Parisian could come back late. But I think Robelis Despain dispatches him in 1.
Yeah, I just wish he trains at a better gym.
I agree, but I mean, so I'll tell you who he reminds me of. Okay, and not from a height or anything, but from a hype and finish. It reminds me of that kid Braxton Smith. Remember when Braxton Smith had that? All the crazy, knocking everybody out, handpick opponents, looks so explosive. And then what did Parker Porter do? Parker Porter went in there and showed that his gas tank was non-existent and picked up the dub. Josh Parisian could clearly do that here. So I don't hate getting behind Josh Parisian. I just don't think he's good.
I don't either. It's just I just have a lot of questions. You're talking about someone who's 4-0. He's pretty much has fought either someone in their pro debut or only had 1 professional fight. So it's one of these things. If I understand, he's 35 years old, and so there really wasn't a lot of time to develop this guy. I just say, I mean, look, he very well could go out there and get 120 points. Very well could do it. But I want to see him do it at this level before I can have confidence that he can do it. That's just where I sit with it. I mean, look, and this just tells you, I mean, the TKO KO prop for him is minus 280. If I was looking at anything, if you just want to do a crazy sprinkle bet, Josh Parisian via decision plus 1,100.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I think that Despain, for me, if I'm playing 150 max, I'd rather be early than late. So I'd rather get it right now rather than when everybody's going to expect it. So
yeah,
I recommend getting behind 9,300 Despain. Just don't go too crazy.
Of course, our only fighter to miss weight today, that was CJ Vergara, weighed at 127 pounds. Of course, he is a plus 425 betting underdog. He is Almabayev minus 600. He's 9,500 on DK, $22 on FanDuel. And for Vergara, 6,700 on DK and $8 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that CJ Vergara missed weight, but I will tell you that maybe it's strategic. I doubt it, but it could be going up against a guy that wants to wrestle him. Vergara seems to be a step behind in all grappling situations. We've seen him struggle to defend takedowns and struggle to defend submission attempts. I think that Asu Almabayev, on the feet, haven't been able to see him all that much, but he wastes no time to get to the takedowns at all. And when he takes people down, he has a beautiful front headlock series where he incorporates Peruvian neckties, guillotines, all sorts of everything. He hunts the neck, and I love that about him. So 9,500, I think Asu Almabayev is a very, very safe play. Does have grappling upside, but I kind of view him as not needing much before he could get the finish against CJ Vergara, where Vergara on the feet will be competitive, but I think that Almabayev will pick up the submission as the fight goes on, however long it lasts. Flyweights are typically competitive. Maybe Almabayev wants to go out there and showcase his striking a little bit more and not rush it. But I think that 9,500 Almabayev is a pretty strong play.
Yeah, I like him, especially as a cash play. In terms of this matchup, then, by the way, over on Prize Picks, Cynthia Strikes 47.5, 12.5 fight time minutes, 2.5 takedown prop, and 100.5 fantasy score. Then our first fight of the night, a rematch. You got JoJo Wood taking on Marina Moroz. Moroz, a minus 235 betting favorite, plus 190 for JoJo. JoJo, 7,200 DK, $10 on FanDuel. Moroz, 9,000 on DK, $20 on FanDuel, Pete.
I'm just laughing because I don't know if it was an echo, but I heard you say JoJo like 5 times, and it just cracked me up. But okay, so we got this fight that initially happened where Marina Moroz was able to submit Joanne Wood rather. That was quite some time ago, and that was back in 2015. We had Marina Moroz score 95 fantasy points. I think that it's pretty clear Joanne Calderwood, from a submission defense standpoint, is untrustworthy. Submitted against Alexa Grasso, Tyler Santos, Jennifer Maia, Jessica Andrade, Marina Moroz. So, like, there's clear armbar from guard, or any submission attempts can get her out of there. But actually, Joanne Wood is a very, very competent MMA fighter. She will attempt submissions in her own right. It's just like she's kind of been like very flaky, and sometimes she like quits out there. And Joanne Wood did look good against Luana Carolina. She went out there 2 of 4 of takedowns, a minute and a half of control time, threw 228 significant strikes, and the volume is something that I do think is admirable here. When Joanne Wood wins wins a decision, which is what I'm projecting to happen, like it go the distance, she scores tremendously well. 91 against Sohee Ham, 137 Courtney Casey, 89 against Ariana Lipsky, and 107 against Jessica I, and then just most recently 104 against Luana Carolina. I think that like Marina Moroz has poor takedown defense, solid takedown offense, and kind of similar to Joanne Calderwood. So basically what this is a value play where I just feel like it's going to be competitive, and probably Marina Moroz wins, but I'm going to be backing Joanne Wood from an underdog situation because I just think at 7,200, she's kind of too cheap for women's MMA, which is a volatile division to begin with. And also she has tremendous volume, very, very good volume, and more variety to her attacks. Whereas Marina Moroz, more boxing focused, boxing and will incorporate some wrestling. Joanne Wood, more of a Muay Thai base, working with her husband. Guys know I'm not fond of Syndicate MMA, but like I pick my spots, and usually when I pick my spots with Syndicate MMA, it works out. So Joanne Wood just needs to not get submitted. And I think as long as she doesn't get submitted, she looks like a completely different person out there, and she will fight for your dollar. So give me Joanne Wood to win a decision here at 7,200. But one way or another, I'm kind of expecting just a high score out of this fight. I think it's just going to be like volume galore. And we have seen Marina Moroz showcase it that she can do the same, but just to less effect.
Yeah, my concern is just if Wood gets taken down. That is my whole concern with this one. But you do love the price tag at 7,200. I don't really love a Marina Moroz at 9,000. I mean, I think if she can get this one to the ground, maybe she gets another submission here. But I definitely prefer Wood in this matchup. Let's get into our straight up fight picks. Main event, give me Sugar Sean.
Sugar Sean.
Co-main event, give me Saint Denis.
Saint Denis pains me.
I will go with my first underdog in Michael Page.
Michael Page, awful fight.
Underdog number 2, Gilbert Burns.
Jack Della Maddalena.
Underdog number 3, Song Yadong.
Peter Yan for me.
I will go Curtis Blades.
Jailton Almeida for me.
Maycee Barber.
Maycee Barber.
Matthias Gamrot.
Yep, Mateusz Gamrot.
Phillips.
Kyler Phillips.
Ian Cutelaba.
Going Philipe Lins.
Michel Pereira.
I'm going Michal Olashechuk.
I will go to Spain, but I still have question marks about him.
To Spain.
Almabayev.
Yep, Almabayev for me.
And then give me my underdog number 4. Give me Wood.
Go and Wood.
Get some questions from Discord. We'll get out of here. Best leverage play. I'll give you a high-end leverage play. Kyler Phillips.
Yep, high-end leverage play. Yep. I'll give you a low-end leverage play, probably Parisian. Parisian.
I was going to say a low-end Dustin Poirier.
I don't necessarily like Parisian, but I mean,
yeah, no, I know.
Low ownership.
Yeah, I know what you mean there. Best takedown upside. We've kind of gone over this. You know, to me, I look at Gilbert Burns, either Blades or Almeida, Gamrot, and Michel Pahea would be the top ones for me.
Yeah, I got Gamrot, Saint Denis, Blades / Almeida, Almabayev, and Cutelaba.
Ranking the 9K options. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 6 9K options this week. Man, it's a tough one because like I see the highest ceiling as Dustin. I do, but I also have concerns about him. Whew.
It's good when you have a finisher in round 1 who throws volume, but
yeah,
a guy
because plus
like
he can have a quick
one
finish
shot and it's over. You know what I mean? Like,
I would probably rank him Dustin 1 because of the high ceiling, Almabayev 2, 3 Gamrot, 4 Sugar, 5 Kyler, 6 Munhoz.
I'm gonna go Almabayev 1, Dustin 2, Gamrot 3, O'Malley 4, Phillips 5, Munhoz 6. Between
these 3 fighters, who can score 100+ points? Vera, RDA, and Parisian. I would probably say Marlon Vera would be the top of that list. I don't know if Parisian and Win can get to 100 because I just think he lays on him. Because I don't see him wanting to get into a stand-up matchup with a Taekwondo artist.
I mean, maybe Rafael dos Anjos can submit Mateusz Gamrot. I don't think so. I'd probably say it's got to be Marlon Vera.
Best cash punt to me, I think it's got to be Marlon Vera.
Agree.
Top underdog value plays with high leverage. So I look at Dustin Poirier, Gilbert Burns. That would be my top 2. Poirier.
I'd probably say you're absolutely correct. I'd say Burns is above Poirier in my opinion.
Yeah. But yeah, look, it should be a great night of fights tomorrow night. Looking forward to checking these out. And, I'll try to hop in that Discord. I'll definitely be there during the prelims. I'm not sure if I'll be there in the main card just because I've got some plans to go out and watch the fights with some friends tomorrow night. So I'm looking forward to watching. I think the main event should be very good. I'm interested to see what Michael Page looks like in his UFC debut. There are some fights that I'm not sure how they're going to go. Blades Almeida is probably one of them.
Yeah. I feel like I picked a lot of underdogs, dude.
I mean, look, we have been in a situation for a lot part of the year where it has been a favorite year, but I feel like we're about to get into a stretch where the dogs are going to start barking.
3, 4. I have 5 underdogs. That might be a record. Granted, we do have 14 fights though.
Yeah, it's a lot of fights. Should be a great night of fights going on over there. So as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of Fight HQ Podcast. If you're watching us here on YouTube, if you're not subscribed to the channel, really appreciate if you would hit that subscribe button. Also, be sure to hit that thumbs up on this video. We're usually here on Thursday or Fridays of Fight Week, so be sure to check us out over here on the Fight HQ Podcast. Of course, also available on the podcasting channels as well. And of course, if you want to join our Discord, totally free. We got that DK contest as well. And so Pete's just having fun over there with you.
No, this guy's making all sorts of noise over here. But yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been a hell of a card, hell of a breakdown. Thank you, Jason, for everything as always. I will be in the contest this week, so you guys better beware because I'm climbing that rank and I'm going to take down that 200K this week. I have a feeling, but good luck, guys.
As we always appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ Podcast, and we will talk to you next week as we'll get you ready for next week's UFC fight card. That it is Tuivasa versus somebody inside the Apex. So yeah, we're just doing some fights in the Apex. That's the way it is. So we'll talk to y'all next week.